The night was darker than usual. The moon hid behind thick clouds, and the stars seemed too afraid to shine. People in cities and towns across the world were going about their daily lives, unaware of what was about to happen. In a quiet village in Europe, an old farmer named Mr. Bennett was closing his barn when he noticed something strange in the sky. At first, he thought it was a bright star, or maybe an airplane, but it was neither. The light grew brighter and larger until he could see the massive shape behind it. Giant spaceship. Within hours, the world was in chaos. Strange ships appeared over major cities, their smooth black surfaces reflecting no light. They hovered silently, casting enormous shadows over the streets below. People panicked, rushing to their homes or staring at the alien crafts in fear. Governments tried to contact the ships, sending messages of peace and curiosity, but there was no reply. Then, without warning, the ships began to attack. Beams of energy shot out from the ships, destroying buildings in an instant. Tanks and planes sent to defend the cities were obliterated before they could get close. The alien technology was far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Their energy shields made them untouchable. Missiles exploded harmlessly against their invisible defenses. The aliens didn't even seem to notice the attacks. They just kept moving forward, taking over city after city. The aliens themselves were terrifying to look at. When they finally stepped out of their ships, people gasped in horror. They were tall, over 7 feet, with glowing yellow eyes and smooth, silvery skin. They moved like predators, calm and confident, as if nothing on earth could harm them. Their voices were deep and mechanical when they spoke, and though humans couldn't understand their language, the tone was clear. They were mocking us. In New York City, a brave group of soldiers tried to hold the line. They set up barricades and aimed their weapons at the advancing aliens. General Marcus, the leader of the defense force, barked orders to his men. "Hold your positions. Don't let them through," he shouted, his voice firm even though he felt fear deep in his chest. The soldiers fired everything they had, bullets, rockets, even experimental laser weapons, but it was useless. The alien shields glowed blue every time a shot hit them, absorbing the impact completely. The aliens laughed. It was a chilling sound, almost like a growl. They pointed at the humans, as if they were nothing more than insects trying to fight a storm. One alien picked up a tank with its bare hands and tossed it aside like a toy. Another alien smashed through a concrete wall without even slowing down. The soldiers' confidence wavered. Some began to retreat, their faces pale with fear. "We're not done yet," General Marcus yelled. He grabbed a rocket launcher and fired it himself, aiming directly at the nearest alien. The explosion lit up the street, but when the smoke cleared, the alien was still standing. It brushed dust off its armor and tilted its head, as if amused. Then it raised its weapon, a sleek black cannon that didn't fire bullets or lasers, but pure energy. The alien fired, and the ground shook as the barricades were destroyed in an instant. The soldiers were thrown back by the blast, their ears ringing. News of the invasion spread quickly. Television channels broadcast images of burning cities and unstoppable aliens. World leaders held emergency meetings, but no one had answers. The question on everyone's mind was the same. How do we fight this? In a small town far from the chaos, a young boy named Liam watched the news with his dog, Max. The screen showed scenes of destruction, but Liam noticed something the reporters didn't mention. The aliens weren't attacking animals. Dogs, birds, and other creatures seemed to move freely around the invaders, completely ignored. Liam scratched Max behind the ears and whispered, "Maybe they don't think you're a threat." Meanwhile, the aliens continued their march across the planet. Their laughter echoed in the ruins of cities, a cruel reminder of their superiority. They didn't just want to conquer Earth, they'd wanted to humiliate humanity. To them, humans were weak and foolish, creatures unworthy of respect. They didn't know that humans had a secret weapon, not technology or brute strength, but something the aliens could never understand. The unbreakable bond between humans and their four-legged companions. As the world seemed to fall apart, whispers of resistance began to grow. People refused to give up, even in the face of such overwhelming power. And somewhere, in the ruins of a battlefield, General Marcus was planning his next move. He didn't know how they could win, but he knew one thing for sure. Humanity would not go down without a fight. The battlefield was a nightmare. Smoke rose from burning buildings, and the sound of explosions filled the air. The soldiers of Earth stood in lines, their weapons ready, but their faces showed fear. They had never seen an enemy like this before. The aliens were faster, stronger, and nearly impossible to harm. Every time a human tried to fight, it felt like punching a steel wall. General Marcus paced back and forth near the command post. His sharp eyes studied the map in front of him, but no strategy seemed to work. "We're losing ground too quickly," he muttered to his second-in-command, Captain Reed. "If we don't find a way to stop them, there won't be anything left to save." Captain Reed nodded, though his face was pale. "Our men are doing their best, sir, but the aliens, they're toying with us. It's like they enjoy watching us struggle." Marcus clenched his fists. He knew Reed was right. Reports from the front lines all told the same story. The aliens were not just fighting, they were mocking. Their laughter echoed through the chaos, a cruel sound that made even the bravest soldiers hesitate. The Zarnak aliens treated the humans as if they were children playing war games. In one corner of the battlefield, Private Jenkins and his squad crouched behind a broken wall. Their rifles were trained on the advancing aliens, but their hands trembled. "How are we supposed to fight these things?" Jenkins whispered, his voice barely audible over the noise of battle. "Keep your head down and your finger on the trigger," barked Sergeant Ramirez. He peeked over the wall and fired a few shots. The bullets hit the alien's shield, creating a brief flash of light before falling harmlessly to the ground. The alien didn't even flinch. Instead, it turned its glowing yellow eyes toward Ramirez and raised its weapon. "Move," Ramirez shouted, and the squad scrambled for cover as a blast of energy destroyed the wall. Dust and debris filled the air. Jenkins coughed, pulling himself to his feet. "We can't keep doing this," he said, panic in his voice. "We're just sitting ducks out here." But retreat wasn't an option. General Marcus had made that clear. "We hold this line," he had said earlier. "If they break through here, they'll reach the capital. And if the capital falls, so does everything else." So the soldiers fought. They fired their weapons, knowing they would do little damage. They laid traps and planted mines, only to watch the aliens walk through them unharmed. Every explosion, every shot felt like a wasted effort. The alien shields glowed brightly, absorbing everything the humans threw at them. Yet, despite the hopelessness, the soldiers didn't give up. They dragged their wounded comrades to safety. They shared ammunition and words of encouragement. "We've survived worse," Ramirez told his squad. "We just need to hold out a little longer." But even he didn't believe his own words. In the skies above, fighter jets roared past, firing missiles at the alien ships. The missiles exploded against the shields, creating fiery bursts that quickly disappeared. One by one, the jets were shot down, spiraling to the ground in flames. On the ground, tanks rolled forward, their cannons firing in unison. The alien infantry barely noticed. They advanced steadily, their laughter growing louder. Back at the command post, Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't working," he growled. "They're too strong." "We need more time to evacuate civilians," Captain Reed said. "If we can hold them back for another day." "Another day," Marcus interrupted. "At this rate, we'll be lucky to hold them back for another hour." As the sun began to set, the battlefield grew even more desperate. The soldiers fought in the fading light, their silhouettes outlined against the flames. They didn't know how to win, but they knew they couldn't surrender. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance, however small, to turn the tide. In the distance, an alien commander watched the battle with amusement. It tilted its head, observing the humans' futile efforts. Pathetic, it said in its deep mechanical voice. They fight like insects. Soon, they will learn their place. But even as the aliens advanced, something unexpected was brewing. General Marcus received a message from the Science Division. "Sir," the voice on the radio crackled, "we might have an idea. It's risky, but it could work." Marcus grabbed the radio. "What idea?" he asked sharply. There was a brief pause before the reply. "It involves dogs." Marcus frowned. "Dogs? You're joking." "No, sir. We're serious. You need to see it for yourself." As the soldiers continued their desperate fight, a spark of hope began to flicker in Marcus's mind. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't out of options yet. General Marcus stared at the screen in disbelief. "You're telling me dogs are the solution to our problem?" he asked, his tone sharp. The scientist on the other end of the video call, Dr. Eleanor Parks, nodded firmly. She looked calm despite the chaos around her lab. Behind her, technicians worked frantically, assembling strange-looking devices. "Yes, General," Dr. Parks said. "We've studied the aliens' behavior carefully. They ignore animals entirely. Dogs, birds, even insects. They don't see them as threats. That's our advantage." Marcus rubbed his temples. "How can dogs help us when our best weapons can't even scratch their shields?" Dr. Parks smiled slightly, as if she had been waiting for this question. She held up a small metallic collar. "This," she said, "is the answer. It's a neural enhancement device. When worn by a dog, it boosts their natural abilities, speed, agility, even intelligence. Combined with their instincts, they can bypass the alien shields and target their weak points." Marcus stared at the collar, then at the screen. He wanted to dismiss the idea as ridiculous, but he knew they were running out of time and options. The aliens were advancing too quickly. Every traditional strategy had failed. Maybe it was time to try something unconventional. "How long will it take to get this dog unit ready?" he asked. "Less than a day," Dr. Parks replied. "We've already trained a few dogs. We just need your approval to deploy them." Marcus sighed heavily. "Fine, do it. But if this fails, you'd better have another plan ready." In a hidden military base far from the front lines, the dog unit was preparing for their first mission. The dogs were a mix of breeds: German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and even a few Labradors. Each one was fitted with the neural enhancement collar and lightweight armor. The soldiers assigned to the unit were skeptical at first, but as they watched the dogs move with incredible speed and precision during training drills, their doubts began to fade. One of the handlers, Corporal Lisa Hayes, crouched down beside her dog, a black and tan German Shepherd named Shadow. "You ready for this, boy?" she asked, scratching behind his ears. Shadow wagged his tail, his bright eyes full of energy and focus. Lisa smiled. "Good. Let's show those aliens what we're made of." Nearby, Dr. Parks gave a final briefing. "The neural collars enhance the dog's senses and reaction times," she explained. "They'll be able to detect weak points in the alien shields and exploit them. Your job is to work as a team. Trust your dogs. They'll lead the way." The soldiers nodded, their expressions a mix of hope and determination. General Marcus stood at the back of the room, watching silently. He still wasn't convinced this plan would work, but he admired the courage of his troops and the loyalty of the dogs. The next morning, the dog unit was deployed to a battlefield near a small town. The area was already in ruins, with alien soldiers patrolling the streets. The human resistance had retreated, unable to hold the line. Now, it was up to the dogs. As the unit approached the town, Shadow led the pack, his nose low to the ground. The neural collar glowed faintly, signaling that it was active. The soldiers followed closely, their weapons ready. The aliens hadn't noticed them yet. Suddenly, Shadow stopped and growled softly. Lisa signaled for the group to halt. She looked ahead and saw 3 aliens standing near a wrecked building. Their shields shimmered faintly, making them look invincible. Lisa glanced at Shadow. "Go," she whispered. Shadow bolted forward, moving so quickly he was almost a blur. The aliens turned, but they were too slow. Shadow leaped through the air, his enhanced jaws clamping down on a small device attached to one alien's armor. Sparks flew as the device broke, and the alien's shield flickered and vanished. "Now," Lisa shouted. The soldiers opened fire, their bullets finally hitting their target. The alien fell, and Shadow darted back to Lisa's side, unharmed. The other dogs followed suit, each one targeting the aliens with precision. One by one, the alien shields failed, and the soldiers took them down. For the first time, the tide of battle began to turn. The aliens, who had laughed at humans before, now looked uncertain. Their mocking grins were replaced with confusion and fear as the dogs outmaneuvered them again and again. Back at the command post, General Marcus watched the live feed with wide eyes. "It's working," he said, almost in disbelief. "It's actually working." Dr. Parks allowed herself a small smile. "I told you, General, sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." Marcus nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. The soldiers and their dogs were proving that humanity wasn't as weak as the aliens believed. Together, they were fighting back and winning. The battlefield was quiet for a moment, the eerie silence broken only by the distant sound of flames crackling. The human soldiers crouched behind broken walls and abandoned cars, their eyes on the dogs at the front. It was hard to believe these animals, with their wagging tails and eager eyes, were about to become the most dangerous force Earth had ever unleashed. Shadow, the German shepherd, stood tall at the center of the pack. His black and tan coat glistened under the faint glow of his neural collar. Beside him, Max, a muscular Belgian Malinois, sniffed the air, his sharp senses detecting the faint hum of alien energy shields nearby. Behind them, the other dogs waited, their bodies tense but ready. "All right, Shadow," Corporal Lisa Hayes whispered. She patted his side gently. "Show us what you can do." Shadow didn't need another word. With a low growl, he darted forward, moving so fast it seemed like he disappeared into the shadows. The other dogs followed, spreading out like a well-trained team. The soldiers held their breath, watching through binoculars and scopes as the dogs approached the alien patrol ahead. 3 aliens stood near a destroyed vehicle, their tall, silver bodies gleaming under the fading sunlight. They weren't expecting an attack. Why would they? Humans had already proven themselves helpless against the Zarnak. The alien shields shimmered faintly, a constant reminder of their technological superiority. But this time was different. Shadow moved silently, his enhanced senses guiding him. He leaped onto a pile of rubble and waited, his eyes locked on the nearest alien. The alien turned its glowing yellow eyes toward the horizon, unaware of the predator watching it. When the moment was right, Shadow sprang into action. With incredible speed, he lunged at the alien's leg, clamping his jaws around a small, glowing device attached to its armor. Sparks flew as the device shattered, and the alien's shield flickered and vanished. The alien roared in surprise, reaching for its weapon, but it was too late. Shadow jumped back as the soldiers opened fire. Bullets struck the alien's unprotected body, and it collapsed to the ground. Max and the others didn't wait for orders. They moved in unison, each targeting a different alien. Max darted under a spray of alien energy blasts, his neural collar giving him the agility to dodge with ease. He leaped onto an alien's chest, his teeth sinking into its armor. The alien stumbled, its shield dropping as Max tore away another key device. The soldiers fired again, and another alien fell. The last alien tried to run, but a Labrador named Daisy intercepted it. Despite her smaller size, she was just as fierce. Her enhanced collar glowed as she jumped onto the alien. using her speed to outmaneuver its clumsy swipes. With one swift move, she tore off its shield device, leaving it vulnerable. A rocket fired by one of the soldiers finished the job. Direct hit, someone shouted over the radio. Cheers erupted among the soldiers. For the first time, they had not only survived but won a skirmish against the Zarnak. As the dogs regrouped, the soldiers emerged from their hiding spots, patting the animals and offering praise. "Good job, Shadow," Lisa said, crouching to rub his ears. Shadow wagged his tail, his sharp eyes still scanning the battlefield for threats. "Did you see that?" one soldier said, grinning. They didn't stand a chance. General Marcus, watching from a command vehicle nearby, felt a surge of pride and hope. The live feed from the battlefield showed the dogs' precision and effectiveness. "They're changing the game," he muttered. Turning to Dr. Parks, who stood beside him, he added, "You were right. These dogs are more than just animals. They're soldiers." Dr. Parks smiled but remained serious. "This is just the beginning, General. The Zarnak won't be caught off guard again. They'll adapt. We need to stay ahead." The next battles came quickly. The aliens were relentless, sending larger forces to retake the areas they had lost. But the dogs were ready. Each encounter proved their worth. They moved faster than any human, striking at the aliens' weak points with unerring accuracy. They turned every skirmish into a victory, their loyalty and bravery inspiring the soldiers around them. Shadow, Max, Daisy, and the others became legends among the troops. Stories of their heroics spread like wildfire. Soldiers began to believe again, their morale climbing with every success. For the first time, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back. But as the victories piled up, so did the risks. The aliens began to focus on the dogs, trying to understand their new enemies. The Zarnak's laughter faded, replaced by grim determination. They didn't like being outsmarted, especially by creatures they considered insignificant. Shadow sensed the change. As he and the others prepared for their next mission, he let out a low growl, his instincts warning him of the danger ahead. Lissa knelt beside him, her expression serious. "I know, boy," she said softly. "They're not laughing anymore." And neither was humanity. The fight was far from over, but now they had something the Zarnak couldn't defeat: hope and the unstoppable bond between humans and their dogs. The Zarnak fleet hovered over Earth like a dark cloud, their massive ships blocking the sunlight in many cities. Inside one of the main command ships, a council of alien leaders gathered. Their faces, usually expressionless and calm, now showed signs of worry. The once confident Zarnak warriors, who had laughed at humanity's efforts, were now speaking in hushed and urgent tones. A hologram of a battlefield played in the center of the room. It showed the dogs in action. Fast, fearless, and devastatingly effective. The Zarnak Council leader, a tall alien with glowing yellow eyes, gestured at the image with one of its long, thin arms. "These creatures are disrupting our plans," it said in a deep, mechanical voice. "How is it possible that such primitive beings can defeat us?" Another Zarnak stepped forward, its silver armor reflecting the light from the hologram. "They are not ordinary animals," it said. "The humans have enhanced them with some kind of technology. They attack with precision and target our shields directly." A low murmur spread among the council. For the first time since the invasion began, the Zarnak felt the sting of fear. Their enemies, once considered weak and laughable, had found a way to strike back. On the battlefield, the dogs continued to prove their worth. Shadow led his pack through the ruins of the city, sniffing out alien patrols. His enhanced senses picked up even the faintest traces of movement. Behind him, the soldiers followed, trusting the dogs to guide them to victory. Max, the Belgian Malinois, darted ahead and stopped at a collapsed building. He barked once, signaling the presence of enemies. The soldiers moved into position, their weapons ready. From the shadows, 2 Zarnak soldiers appeared, their shields glowing faintly. They scanned the area, their weapons drawn, but they didn't see Max creeping closer. With a burst of speed, Max lunged at the first alien, his jaws clamping onto its shield generator. Sparks flew as the device shattered, and the alien's shield disappeared. The soldiers fired, taking down the now vulnerable enemy. The second alien turned to attack, but Max was already moving, dodging its weapon blasts with incredible agility. A second dog, Daisy, joined the fight, her small but fierce frame tackling the alien's legs. It fell, and the soldiers finished the job. "Good work, Max, Daisy," a soldier called out, patting the dogs as they returned to the group. The team pressed on, their morale high. Each victory chipped away at the aliens' confidence. Back on the command ship, the Zarnak Council reviewed reports from the battlefield. The humans' use of dogs was spreading fear among their ranks. Zarnak soldiers, who once marched into battle with arrogance, now hesitated at the sight of a dog. Some even retreated, unwilling to face these agile and deadly opponents. A young Zarnak officer stood before the council, its voice trembling as it delivered its report. "The soldiers are demoralized. They say the humans' creatures are unstoppable. Some believe they are more than animals, that they are a new kind of weapon designed to destroy us." "Nonsense," the council leader snapped. "They are just animals. Find a way to neutralize them." But the fear was already spreading. On the front lines, Zarnak patrols grew more cautious. They started avoiding areas where the dogs had been spotted, giving up strategic positions. The humans used this to their advantage, reclaiming territory and strengthening their defenses. "It'll adapt, just like we did." Marcus nodded. "I know. That's why we need to stay ahead of them. Keep pushing the research on those neural collars. If we can make the dogs even more effective, we might have a real chance to end this war." On the ground, Shadow and his team reached an alien outpost. The dogs moved silently, their enhanced senses picking up the faint hum of shield generators. Shadow signaled with a low growl, and the pack spread out, each dog taking a position around the outpost. The soldiers waited for the signal to attack. Shadow made the first move, darting forward and disabling the outpost's main shield generator. The structure's defenses flickered and went offline. The soldiers rushed in, taking out the aliens with well-coordinated strikes. Within minutes, the outpost was secured. As the humans celebrated another victory, the Zarnak leader received the grim news aboard the command ship. Its glowing eyes dimmed as it stared at the hologram. The dogs had become more than a nuisance. They were a symbol of human resistance, a force the Zarnak had underestimated. The leader turned to its council. "Prepare our next move," it said coldly. "These creatures may have turned the tide, but we will show them that fear works both ways." Despite its words, the leader couldn't shake the growing unease in its chest. The humans were no longer the weak prey they had once seemed, and their dogs were proving to be the deadliest predators the Zarnak had ever faced. The skies above Earth were filled with fire. Zarnak ships hovered menacingly, their energy cannons lighting up the night. On the ground, human soldiers and their loyal dogs prepared for the fight of their lives. This wasn't just another battle. This was the final stand. If they failed, Earth would fall. Shadow stood at the front of the pack, his sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. Beside him, Max, Daisy, and the other dogs waited, their bodies tense but ready. The neural collars around their necks glowed faintly, sensing their movements with the soldiers. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to put everything to the test. General Marcus stood on a makeshift command platform, his voice booming over the radio. "This is it, people. The Zarnak think they can crush us, but they don't know what we're capable of. Stick to your squads, trust your dogs, and fight like your lives depend on it, because they do." Cheers erupted from the soldiers, their morale bolstered by the general's words. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they were determined to fight. The Zarnak forces began their assault with a deafening barrage of energy blasts. Buildings crumbled and the ground shook. Human soldiers scattered, taking cover behind rubble and abandoned vehicles. But the dogs didn't flinch. Shadow barked once, signaling his team to move. The pack split up, each dog leading a squad of soldiers toward key enemy positions. Shadow led his squad through a narrow alley, avoiding the heavy fire from above. He sniffed the air, detecting the faint hum of a Zarnak shield generator nearby. He darted forward, his paws silent against the debris-strewn ground. The soldiers followed, their weapons at the ready. Shield generator spotted. One soldier whispered, pointing to a glowing device guarded by two Zarnak warriors. Shadow growled low, his signal for the team to prepare. Then, with a burst of speed, he charged. The Zarnak didn't see him coming until it was too late. Shadow clamped his jaws around the generator, tearing it free from its mount. Sparks flew as the device short-circuited, and the Zarnak shields flickered and vanished. Now, the squad leader shouted. The soldiers opened fire, their bullets cutting through the unprotected aliens. Within moments, the area was secure. On the other side of the battlefield, Max and Daisy were leading similar assaults. Max darted through a hail of energy blasts, his neural collar enhancing his reflexes. He reached a Zarnak sniper position and took out the alien guards with swift, calculated strikes. Meanwhile, Daisy guided her squad to an enemy command post, using her small size to sneak past patrols and disable critical systems. The dog's bravery and precision turned the tide of the battle. Human forces, once on the defensive, began to push the Zarnak back. Each victory inspired the soldiers, their hope reigniting with every step forward. Inside the Zarnak flagship, the alien leader watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic screen. Its yellow eyes narrowed as it observed the humans' progress. "These creatures are more dangerous than we anticipated," it said, its voice cold. "Deploy the Titan mechs." Moments later, massive Zarnak war machines descended from the sky. Towering over the battlefield, the Titan mechs unleashed a devastating wave of destruction. Their heavy cannons tore through human defenses, and their energy shields seemed impenetrable. The soldiers fell back, their earlier momentum halted. Shadow and the other dogs regrouped with their squads, their eyes fixed on the new threat. General Marcus's voice came over the radio, urgent but steady. "We can't let those machines win. Focus your fire on their joints and power cores. Dogs, do what you do best." Shadow led the charge, weaving through the chaos toward the nearest Titan mech. He leaped onto its massive leg, using his neural collar to pinpoint a weak spot. With a powerful bite, he tore through a cable, causing the mech to stumble. Max and Daisy joined in, targeting other vulnerable areas. The soldiers followed their lead, concentrating their fire on the damaged mech until it collapsed in a fiery explosion. One by one, the Titan mechs fell, each victory hard-fought but decisive. The dogs' relentless attacks and the soldiers' determination proved too much for the Zarnak machines. The battlefield was soon littered with the smoking remains of the once mighty war machines. As the sun began to rise, the Zarnak forces started to retreat. Their confidence, once unshakable, was now broken. The alien leader, watching from the flagship, clenched its claws in frustration. "This isn't over," it hissed. But deep down, it knew the truth. The humans had won. On the ground, the soldiers cheered as the last of the Zarnak ships disappeared into the sky. Shadow, Max, Daisy, and the other dogs stood among them, their tails wagging despite their exhaustion. They had done the impossible. They had saved Earth. General Marcus stepped forward, his voice filled with pride. "Today, we showed the Zarnak what humanity is made of. We showed them that no matter how strong they think they are, we will always fight back, and will never fight alone." The soldiers erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the battlefield. Shadow barked, his tail wagging as Lisa knelt beside him. "Good job, boy," she said, scratching behind his ears. "We couldn't have done it without you." And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, humanity stood united, ready for whatever came next. The battlefield lay silent. Smoke rose in thin spirals from the remains of Zarnak ships and war machines. The air smelled of ash and metal, but there was a new scent too: victory. For the first time in months, the skies above Earth were clear of alien ships. Humanity had won. General Marcus stood on a raised platform overlooking the battlefield. His uniform was torn, and his face was streaked with dirt, but his eyes sparkled with pride. Around him, soldiers celebrated. They hugged, cheered, and raised their weapons in triumph. Yet, amidst all the human heroes, the real stars were the dogs. Shadow sat at the center of the crowd, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. Max, Daisy, and the other dogs surrounded him, their tails wagging despite their exhaustion. Soldiers patted them, scratched their ears, and whispered words of gratitude. "You saved us," one soldier said, kneeling to pet Max. The dog leaned into him, his big brown eyes filled with warmth. Another soldier held Daisy in his arms, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't think we'd make it," he said softly, "but you showed us how to fight." As the sun climbed higher, General Marcus addressed the troops. "Today we stand as one, humans and dogs, side by side, against an enemy that thought they could break us. They underestimated our courage, our ingenuity, and most of all, our bond." The soldiers erupted into applause. Shadow barked, his deep voice carrying across the crowd like a command. The other dogs joined in, their barks echoing like a victory anthem. Among the crowd, Dr. Parks watched with a quiet smile. Her work on the neural collars had been a gamble, but it had paid off in ways she hadn't imagined. She approached Shadow and knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his head. "You're more than a soldier," she said. "You're a hero." Shadow tilted his head, his sharp eyes meeting hers. For a moment, it seemed as though he understood every word. In the days that followed, humanity began to rebuild. Cities were cleared of rubble, and survivors emerged from shelters to help with the recovery. But even as they worked, the memory of the dogs' bravery lingered in everyone's minds. The Zarnak, too, had learned their lesson. After their defeat, they retreated to their homeworld, their pride shattered. In a rare move, the Zarnak leader sent a message to Earth. The holographic projection appeared in the United Nations Assembly Hall, where leaders from around the world had gathered. The Zarnak leader's glowing yellow eyes flickered as it spoke. "Humans of Earth, you have proven yourselves to be worthy opponents. Your resilience and unity are unmatched. We underestimated you, and for that, we paid the price." The room fell silent as the alien continued. "We offer a truce. No Zarnak ship will approach your planet again. You have earned our respect." General Marcus, standing at the front of the assembly, nodded. "We accept your truce. But remember this: if you ever threaten us again, we won't hesitate to fight back." The Zarnak leader inclined its head, a gesture of acknowledgement, before the hologram disappeared. Back on the battlefield, a ceremony was held to honor the heroes of the war. Medals were awarded to soldiers who had shown extraordinary bravery, but the loudest cheers were reserved for the dogs. Shadow stood proudly as General Marcus placed a medal around his neck. The crowd roared with applause. Max, Daisy, and the other dogs were also honored, each receiving medals and a standing ovation. "These dogs are not just our allies," Marcus said, addressing the crowd. "They are our family. They fought for us, they bled for us, and they never gave up. We owe them everything." The applause grew even louder, and many soldiers wiped tears from their eyes. Shadow barked once, his tail wagging, and the other dogs followed suit. Their voices blended with the cheers of the crowd, a symphony of unity and triumph. As the ceremony ended, Shadow and the other dogs were led to a quiet field away from the crowd. Lissa knelt beside Shadow, stroking his fur. "You did it, boy," she said softly. "You saved us all." Shadow leaned into her touch, his body finally relaxing. For the first time in weeks, he felt safe. Around him, the other dogs rested, their heads on their paws, their eyes half closed. In the distance, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was a new beginning for Earth, a future built on courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between humans and their loyal companions. As darkness fell, the stars began to appear, twinkling like tiny beacons of hope. And in the quiet of the night, the dogs slept, dreaming of a world they had fought to protect, a world where humanity stood united, stronger than ever before.